What am I even saying? What's the intro? What up, crew? Hope you're all doing well. If you're joining me here for the first time, my name is Vineet and I go by CardMechanic here on YouTube. And sometimes I do CardMechanic-like things. Sometimes. If you've been doing Magic for a while now, I'm sure there are moves that you've been trying to get down for like ages, the longest time. And I'm not even talking about extremely difficult moves. I'm talking about moves that people learn in like a couple days, a couple of weeks. You're here for like months, years, just... For me, those moves were the Pinky Count and the Pharaoh. And you know what else was on the list for me? That's right, the Top Shot. Now I'm going to show you exactly how I learned it so you can go out and perform it like that. So grab your deck, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and now let's do it. Alright, yo, we are finally here for the tutorial, but before we get started, a little bit of background on this move. Of course, it is known as Top Shot by Leonard Green. Not Leonard, Leonard Green. And the whole premise behind this move is that you're shooting a card from the top of the deck from one hand to the other. And by the way, I literally just opened up a brand new pack of these Ace Fultons. I've never actually used these decks before, but my god, they handle like a dream right out of the pack. So if you can get these, I'd highly recommend it. Not sponsored. Alright, let's talk about what you've been waiting for, the technicalities behind this move. First things first, let's start off with the grip. So you're not going to be holding it in a standard mechanics grip like this. You're going to be shifting the fingers over to the side. You're going to have 4 fingers on this side, thumb long ways across the other side, and the deck almost resting on your palm, but not really. So it's not completely down. You can see there's a little bit of space here. It's not all the way down like this, otherwise my fingers would be on too deep. Lifting it up a little bit, and you can see it's almost resting right around here against the base of my thumb. That is the basic grip. Let me talk a little bit more about what these 4 fingers here are doing. The index finger you can see is nowhere near the top of the deck. You can't see the top of my nail. It's right over to the side. And what's going to happen in this whole process, the way the move works, is that when you're flicking this card out, it's almost going to spin about this index finger. So you want to make sure the index finger kind of stays sturdy when you're doing the card flick, which we'll get into for a minute. So you want to make sure that this is solid across here and not touching the top of the playing card. If there's a little skin on there, that's fine, but ideally not on top like this, but on the side like so. Now these 2 fingers here, the middle finger and the ring finger, I actually don't even like to have them make contact with the deck when I'm shooting out the playing card. Otherwise I end up with certain issues that I'll talk about later. But in terms of the grip, I just leave it lightly on the deck like this, not like directly on like this, just lightly on top of the deck. And next my pinky is going to be heavily on top of the deck, squeezing this corner right here. So as you can see, this is like this. And one more last thing to note, my thumb here, you can see on top, is above this corner because the pressure is going to be built up with the thumb. So you have to have a little bit of your thumb skin. So this whole corner, the top of the corner right here is going to go into your thumb, looking something like that. So overall, here is your full grip. Of course, the next important thing now is shooting out the card. And this is why I told you to move these 2 fingers kind of out of the way a little bit, because if I keep my fingers here and I pull it out, it almost does the Cardini change, right? So the Cardini change looks something like this, right? Where you have 2 cards here and you're doing the Cardini change, you flick the corner and the card kind of moves on over to the side. So having multiple fingers kind of, for at least me, it did not help me very much. And sometimes what also happened was when I did the shot, for the shot, all you're really doing is pulling the pinky down, right? So all you're gonna be doing is pulling the pinky down, you're building tension here, pull the pinky down and you'll see the card kind of flies out. So let me do that one more time. Here, you're building tension, card flies out like this. What I actually did the first time, I shot it downwards, and the card kind of flipped over onto the ground like so. Let me just go ahead and pick up my cards. So what I'm doing for the shot here is I'm not pulling down this way, I'm not pulling in this direction, I'm pulling in the direction of this corner. So you can see this corner is not like going this way, it's not going down, it's going in like a diagonal direction. So you're pulling this card in the direction of the corner, and you'll see that card flies out straight this way instead of going down on the ground. Whereas this, if you pull here, the card is going straight down to the ground. And that's where I had the biggest issue when I was learning this move, is that my card would never fly to the other hand. It would constantly go directly onto the ground. But the biggest technique or tip that helped me was just practicing, trying out different areas and locations for this pinky, and I found that in this corner is what really helps. So the whole process one more time: you have your grip like this, index finger solid, thumb pretty solid, pinky is the one that's going to be doing the action. These two fingers you kind of want to get out of the way when you're shooting out the playing card. When you're shooting the card out, you press down and out in a diagonal angle, so the card actually flies out. This is definitely something that you'll need to practice for some time before you get it down, because it will not always shoot out in the direction that you want, and you also need to figure out exactly where you're shooting the card so that you can catch the card, which we'll talk about now. So this is part 2 of my greatest struggles in learning this move, was actually catching the playing card, because the playing card would never land in my hand. It would like go above it, go under it, hit my hand, bounce right off, and I couldn't catch in time. And that last one, by the way, it's going to be practice. There's no secret technique or move. You're just gonna have to get really good at figuring out when to catch the card. And even like yesterday when I was practicing for this video, I wanted to get it down like 100%, but still out of like the 50 or 100 or so cards that I shot, I missed like 4 or 5 catches with my hand. So it's not gonna be perfect, at least for me it's not perfect, but I'm sure with enough practice you can get it down perfectly. So when catching, here are a couple tips I have for you. Remember, we're pulling down and diagonal for shooting the card out, so you don't want to hold the card or the deck like this. You want to hold it a bit at an angle, and I tilt my hand or my wrist down a little bit like this, so the card kind of comes almost flying up, and then I catch it in my hand. Of course I missed. Like I was saying, the card comes out like this. It almost does a very, very small arc. It's noticeable with like the long distances, but from a short distance you can't really tell that the arc is happening. So that's also one thing you want to play around with, is what distance you're going to have your hand. Of course you can't have it here, otherwise, you know, what's the point? And you can't have it like all the way over there, because it's not going to work. It just won't work. So for me, the biggest things that really helped was sitting there practicing and figuring out exactly where the card would land whenever I was doing the top shot. I wish I had more advice or tips for you on how to catch, but I mean, catching is catching. Either you catch it or you don't catch it. That's going to come down to practice. Whether you play football, basketball, baseball, cardistry, card production stuff, it's all the same. You have to learn to catch. One last thing I want to talk about in this video is use cases. So I like using them in 2 different ways. One is when you're revealing the card at the end and kind of making it pop out, like, oh, there you go, there's your selected card. Or 2, for example, we have the aces that we're using here. And in the beginning of a trick, right, if you're going to use, like, for example, the 2 aces for a sandwich routine, it's really cool to do the top shot and have those 2 aces produced, and then you continue on with your effect, ultimately revealing the card between the 2 aces later on. And I'm sure there are hundreds of other things that you can do with it, but this has been the basics of the top shot. Hope you got some good stuff out of this video, and if you want to continue learning card productions, I have a mini playlist for you right over there. And if you don't want to learn, then I guess that's fine too. That's okay. Thanks so much for spending your time with me today. It's always a pleasure having you here. Have a great day ahead, and I hope to see you in one of those videos.